Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rucha. I don't like museums, and if you see the title of this video, you'll be like, why are you filming then? Museums are basically like a collection of history, things that has been done already. And when I was younger, I used to think, what's the point, of looking back at history and seeing things that you've already done? You should look towards the present and forward. But then I grew up and I started to appreciate history a little more, and so I thought to myself, why not go to museums and see how that would be like? As a Singaporean, I actually get free entry to a wide variety of museums. Let's choose museums I've never been to before, go there, figure out the scenes, the sights, and how I like it, and show you guys my experience. Majority of these museums I'm not allowed to film, and if this video gets taken down, it's probably because one of the museums told me to take it down. So with that said, let's move on to the museums that I actually went to. So the first museum I visited was the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple Museum. It's a temple and a museum together in one building. So the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple is actually a tourist attraction that is free of entry, free of charge for everyone to enter. You just have to be appropriately dressed. The nearest MRT to it is Maxwell MRT. So the actual museum is located on levels 2 and 3. Level 4 is a prayer hall that I could not take photos or videos in because there are actual people sitting there and meditating. And level 5 is a rooftop garden. And when you actually go inside, the temple itself, located on the first floor, is very pretty. A lot of gold accents around. There's a chanting hall right in the middle in the courtyard, as well as stuff on the back. And actually it was really touristy. A lot of tourists were coming in, taking pictures, just observing the temple. But then there were also locals that were coming in to pray. And I actually did have the opportunity to observe a chanting session that the monks and disciples did in the temple, but I chose not to film it out of respect. So within the museum itself, the museum had its own themes for its exhibition, which is the founding and the growth of two Buddhas. One is Buddha Shakyamuni, the other one is Buddha Maitreya. And the two main ideas that I got from looking at the exhibition is, one, they had a really good comprehensive display about how Buddhism came about as a religion generally in the world, in the grand scheme of things, and who were its founding fathers, the Buddhas of the world. And secondly, how Buddhism came to Singapore as a religion itself and how it grew to the prominence that it has today. I have to admit that I did not come to this temple and museum with a good knowledge of Buddhism. In fact, I didn't really know much about it. But honestly speaking, even after looking at the museum exhibits, I can't say that I walked away with a lot of newfound knowledge about Buddhism. There was just some things I learned along the way, but not a really enriched understanding. So the rooftop garden located at the highest level, level 5, the garden itself was small and had orchids and all. It was pretty, but it was small, so it was just okay, But what really impressed me was the Verokana prayer wheel that was right in the center, where if you turned it, it made a bell sound, and it was really calming, like oddly calming. And there was also a 10,000 Buddha pagoda that was situated within the center around the prayer wheel, as well as around the perimeter of the garden. It's much prettier again in person if you were to go and see. So my overall rating for the temple would be a solid 7 out of 10. If you want a very calm and serene environment in the middle of the city, it's a great place to visit, and they welcome everybody. So pop over if you're in the area. And compared to the actual museum itself, I liked the temple more. So I think if you were to go there, you can go and walk around the museum, but it would be best to stick to the temple as well as the rooftop garden. So the Indian Heritage Center, as you can already tell from the name, is providing information on the Indian heritage. I went to level 4 first, watched a 10-minute film on the early Indian pioneers that come to Singapore and Malaya, because that time frame was basically before and after the separation between Singapore and Malaysia. I honestly really enjoyed the film. Not only was it a refresher of my secondary school history, but also it came from a little bit more of an Indian-centric perspective, which is something I enjoyed because the history that I learned was very general. So the exhibit contains statues of deities and a collection of more religious and people-centric collectibles. I don't really know how to say it. And these include clothes that Indians brought to Singapore and excerpts from their religious practices, such as like temple doors, the cow god, beautiful costumes, jewelry, things that they use on a daily, like cups and plates. I actually recognized about half of the things, so the familiarity was pretty comforting, but the other new things that I saw was pretty nice to see as well. There was also an Indian dancer dancing on screen. I'm not sure whether it was Bharatnatyam or Kathak, but I was trying to copy her while trying to film with one hand, and it was a mild success, I'd say. I think their exhibits were also very kid-friendly because there was an interactive display detailing what clothes and accessories matched together for both men and women, and it was quite fun to read the names of different things in Tamil instead of what I know in Hindi. I went down to level 3, and level 3 was slightly more subtle in its exhibits. It showed like a wall full of influential Indian people in their respective fields, and even though I felt proud that Singaporean Indians were excelling in their fields and carving a space and a voice out for the Indian community here in Singapore, the whole wall structure that they had felt a little random. Like, it wasn't categorized by any means, it was just different pictures laid out, and of course the information is really comprehensive, but it was a little too much to take in. But I did see 2 statues I recognized. Here are the pictures, and comment down below if you recognize them. The real highlight for me, however, was the tiled mosaic structure of a door, wall, whatever you see. I think I remember seeing it in a mosque, like on the outside. It might be found in other places as well, but it was the most visually appealing in terms of its colors and how shiny it was. Also a mural of different places in Singapore with Indian presence, and a lot of which I recognize, so I guess that's saying something. Overall rating, 6 out of 10. Pop over if you're in the area, but don't make a trip specifically down for it unless you're very, very keen to learn the history of Singaporean Indians. The next museum I went to was the Singapore City Gallery, located a 5-minute walk away from Tanjong Pagar MRT. On level 2 and 3 of the City Gallery building, there's actually a side exhibit as well as the main gallery, and the side exhibit shows how Singapore has grown from a plot of land that it was in the 90s, or rather in the 1900s, all the way to what it is today. The collective historical evidence that was present in the side exhibit showed how different neighborhoods changed over time and the different aspects that were involved in the development of a city. The exhibits themselves were very hands-on and interactive, with presenter screens showing different transport maps and pull-out drawer-style vertical displays showing the key ideas that went into designing a particular area, and that every area is different. So the main gallery's foyer is made up of a Lego and cardboard display of the entire central business district, and different models located at the side of the display actually show how the different buildings within the display were constructed. The gallery mainly exhibits how Singapore has developed its population, its reputation as a city-state, its economic growth, natural heritage, all from the past to what it is now. The different aspects of how a city is run, such as water, electricity, waste, transport, and smart technology, was also presented very interactively. You can step on the floor, you can go touch a wall. I found that really fun. A really cool one that I actually came across was putting down what you aspire in the neighborhood that you're living in, and they give you different options that you can indicate, and based on the choices that you indicate, they tell you which neighborhood you should live in and what other people previously have chosen as well. And I found that very interesting. Overall, I felt quite appreciative of the different considerations and thoughts and aspects that the builders of this country have had to consider before actually building the city to what it is today. And I feel quite humbled knowing that Singapore has come so far and it's only up from here. And I think this gallery is amazing for someone who wants to develop an in-depth understanding of the architectural decisions as well as all the considerations that go behind urban planning. My rating for this place would definitely be a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed how interactive the displays were. As a geography nerd, I loved the human geography aspect of this gallery, and I would recommend for anyone to visit it with friends or family. So the next museum is the Singapore Sports Museum, which is located at Kallang. First, when you walk in, there is a compilation of different sports venues such as different sports associations and fields and locations where different teams train. Further back, it had a whole history of like the construction of the national stadium and how it came about, even down to like how much cement and stuff they used. It was pretty interesting. So the history behind different games, including the Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, Youth Olympics, everything was presented really nicely. They had like that flame ignition thing that they light during the Youth Olympic Games, if I'm not mistaken. Even that was presented there, which I thought was a nice touch. And actually I was I think, lack of better word, alive during the 2010 Youth Olympics that happened in Singapore. So I do have some memory of it happening here. For the athletes that were shown, there was an entire Hall of Fame presenting Singapore athletes who are both individuals and also in teams for a variety of sports, including commonly known ones like football, tennis and swimming, but also less common ones such as silat and weightlifting, amongst many others. Also a good presentation of female athletes and how recognition for female sporting grew over the years, as well as minority groups such as the Paralympic Games, as well as any disabled athletes that wanted to participate. And all games were also presented. I'm not sure they're counted as sports anymore, but things such as the 5 stones, as well as the feather toy, that was also presented, which I thought was a good, more community-centric perspective for sports. I really enjoyed seeing that. The whole layout of the museum was also designed well. It was round with a sports running track, as well as everything presented around and within it, which I thought was quite nice as well. There was also a dream menu for you to try out different sports such as tennis and golf. I really liked it, and I couldn't film in the museum, so I couldn't film myself failing at golf, but trust me when I say this, I failed at golf. Last but not least, there was also a curation of sports equipment and merchandise from both Singaporean as well as overseas athletes for the Youth Olympic Games and the Commonwealth Games that was presented in the center of the museum. And while I liked the variety, there was a hat, there was a jersey, I also thought it was a little random. My overall rating for this museum is a 7 out of 10. I'm not a sports fanatic by any means, so it was interesting for me to go in and learn a thing or two about sporting history in relation to Singaporean athletes. But then I would rather go not alone. I went alone, but I would go with someone who is a sports fanatic, so they're able to walk me through the exhibits better. But maybe it's also my bad, because they have a guided tour at 11 and 3, but I missed both timings. So that was my experience. The next museum I went to was the Gem Museum, which is a private museum, a collection of someone that has collected gemstones over decades, and it's free entry for everyone. And the museum is pretty small. It's 3 stories tall, but the first floor has majority of the exhibits and showroom compared to level 2 and 3. So we learnt about how gemstones came about from the ground. Here is a little, I guess, flowchart for you to see. And as a geography fanatic, I enjoyed it because it related directly to what I learned in physical geography. Really good. And we learnt about the different classes and types of gemstones, their origins in the world. It was really, really interesting. And the guide who was sharing it all the information with us, was really knowledgeable. Overall, my experience at this museum was very positive because I learned many interesting facts about gemstones that I had not learned of previously. For instance, Sri Lanka's beaches are actually, like, the sand in Sri Lanka's beaches are full of gemstones that you need to spend a lot of time and energy trying to dissect, but if you go there, you're basically walking on jewels. And I realized that certain gems, they do have lines carved into them. They are called, I think, cat shaped, or they count from the center and you can actually see like the lines in the shape of a constellation almost. It's really cool. We also learned about the diamond industry and how diamonds are transformed literally from raw to rich and ready for sale. I also learned about the different minerals that were made up within gemstones itself, like the mineral composition. That was very interesting for me. And in general, I think I felt more inclined to go around the museum and look at the things without actually taking pictures of them because I was in a tour. But I did manage to take some pictures of myself. And my overall rating for this museum would be 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed my experience and I would go back for perhaps one of their workshops. And maybe in the future, if I earn more money, I'll go back to buy gems because they do sell gemstones that they make over there, as well as they have their own custom jewelry thing that I won't even get into right now because and that's all. Those are the 5 museums I've visited within the past week, and I've decided to condense my few days of experiences into this video, and I hope that you enjoyed looking at the different museums from my perspective. And I have enjoyed my time surprisingly so far, so I will be going to more museums in the future. And if you have any recommended museums for me, you can put them in the comments below. I'll definitely take your considerations into consideration. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.